Book 9 of Paradise Lost, second edition, by John Milton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Thomas Copeland. Paradise Lost, Book 9, The Argument. Satan, having compassed the earth with meditated guile, returns as a mist by night into paradise, enters into the serpent sleeping. Adam and Eve in the morning go forth to their labors, which Eve proposes to divide in several places, each laboring apart. Adam consents not, alleging the danger lest that enemy of whom they were forewarned should attempt her found alone. Eve, loath to be thought not circumspect or firm enough, urges her going apart, the rather desirous to make trial of her strength. Adam at last yields. The serpent finds her alone. His subtle approach, first gazing, then speaking with much flattery, extolling Eve above all other creatures. Eve, wondering to hear the serpent speak, asks how he attained to human speech, and such understanding not till now. The serpent answers that by tasting of a certain tree in the garden he attained both to speech and reason, till then void of both. Eve requires him to bring her to that tree, and finds it to be the tree of knowledge forbidden. The serpent, now grown bolder, with many wiles and arguments, induces her at length to eat. She, pleased with the taste, deliberates a while whether to impart thereof to Adam or not. At last brings him of the fruit, relates what persuaded her to eat thereof. Adam, at first amazed, but perceiving her lost, resolves through vehemence of love to perish with her, and extenuating the trespass, eats also of the fruit. The effects thereof in them both. They seek to cover their nakedness, then fall to variance and accusation of one another. No more of talk where God or angel guest with man as with his friend, familiar, used to sit indulgent, and with him partake rural repast, permitting him the while venial discourse unblamed. I now must change those notes to tragic. Foul distrust and breach disloyal on the part of man, revolt and disobedience; on the part of heaven, now alienated, distance and distaste; anger and just rebuke and judgment given, that brought into this world a world of woe; sin and her shadow, death, and misery, death's harbinger. Sad task, yet argument not less but more heroic than the wrath of stern Achilles on his foe pursued thrice fugitive about Troy wall, or rage of Turnus for Lavinia disespoused, or Neptune's ire, or Juno's that so long perplexed the Greek and Cytherea's son. If answerable style I can obtain of my celestial Patroness, who deigns her nightly visitation unimplored, and dictates to me slumbring, or inspires easy my unpremeditated verse. Since first this subject for heroic song pleased me, long choosing and beginning late, not sedulous by nature to indite wars, hitherto the only argument heroic deemed, chief maestry to dissect with long and tedious havoc fabled knights in battles famed; the better fortitude of patience and heroic martyrdom unsung, or to describe races and games, or tilting furniture, emblazoned shields, impraises quaint, caparisons and steeds, bases and tinsel trappings, gorgeous knights at juiced and tournament; then marshall'd feast served up in hall with sewers and seneschals; the skill of artifice or office mean, not that which justly gives heroic name to person or to poem. Me of these nor skill'd nor studious higher argument remains, sufficient of it self to raise that name; unless an age too late, or cold climate, or years damp my intended wing depressed, and much they may, if all be mine, not hers who brings it nightly to my ear. The Sun was sunk, and after him the Star of Hesperus, whose office is to bring twilight upon the earth, short arbiter twixt day and night. And now from end to end Night's hemisphere had veil'd the horizon round, when Satan, who late fled before the threats of Gabriel out of Eden, now improved in meditated fraud and malice, bent on man's destruction, maugre what might hap of heavier on himself, fearless returned. By night he fled, and at midnight returned from compassing the earth, cautious of day, since Uriel, Regent of the Sun, descried his entrance, and forewarned the Cherubim that kept the watch. Thence full of anguish driven, the space of 7 continued nights he rode with darkness. Thrice the equinoctial line he circled, 4 times crossed the car of night from pole to pole, traversing each colure. On the 8th returned, and on the coast averse from entrance or cherubic watch, by stealth found unsuspected way. There was a place, now not, though sin not time first wrought the change, where Tigris at the foot of Paradise into a gulf shot under ground, till part rose up a fountain by the Tree of Life. In with the river sunk, and with it rose Satan, involved in rising mist, then sought where to lie hid. Sea he had search'd, and land from Eden over Pontus and the pool Myotis up beyond the river Ob, downward as far Antarctic, and in length west from Orontes to the ocean barr'd at Darien, thence to the land where flows Ganges and Indus. Thus the Orb he roam'd with narrow search, and with inspection deep consider'd every creature, which of all most opportune might serve his wiles, and found the Serpent, subtlest beast of all the field. Him after long debate, irresolute of thoughts revolv'd, his final sentence chose fit vessel, fittest imp of fraud, in whom to enter, and his dark suggestions hide from sharpest sight. For in the wily Snake, whatever slights, none would suspicious mark, as from his wit and native subtlety proceeding, which in other beasts observ'd, doubt might beget of diabolic power, active within beyond the sense of brute. Thus he resolv'd, but first from inward grief his bursting passion into plaints thus pour'd: O Earth, how like to Heaven, if not preferr'd more justly, seat worthier of Gods, as built with second thoughts, reforming what was old. For what God after better worse would build? Terrestrial Heaven, danc'd round by other Heavens, that shine, yet bear their bright officious lamps, light above light, for thee alone as seems, in thee concentring all their precious beams of sacred influence. As God in Heaven is Center, yet extends to all, so thou, centring, receiv'st from all those Orbs. In thee, not in themselves, all their known virtue appears, productive in herb, plant, and nobler birth of creatures animate, with gradual life of growth, sense, reason, all summ'd up in man. With what delight could I have walk'd thee round, if I could joy in aught? Sweet interchange of hill and valley, rivers, woods and plains, now land, now sea, and shores with forest crown'd, rocks, dens and caves. But I in none of these find place or refuge, and the more I see pleasures about me, so much more I feel torment within me, as from the hateful siege of contraries. All good to me becomes bane, and in Heaven much worse would be my state. But neither here seek I, no, nor in Heaven to dwell, unless by maistring Heaven supreme, nor hope to be my self less miserable by what I seek, but others to make such as I, though thereby worse to me redound. For only in destroying I find ease to my relentless thoughts, and him destroy'd, or won to what may work his utter loss, for whom all this was made, all this will soon follow, as to him link'd in weal or woe. In woe then, that destruction wide may range, to me shall be the glory sole among th' infernal Powers, in one day to have marr'd what he Almighty styl'd 6 nights and days continued making, and who knows how long before had been contriving, though perhaps not longer than since I in one night freed from servitude inglorious well nigh half th' Angelic name, and thinner left the throng of his adorers. He to be aveng'd, and to repair his numbers thus impair'd, whether such virtue spent of old now fail'd more Angels to create, if they at least are his created, or to spite us more, determin'd to advance into our room a creature form'd of earth, and him endow, exalted from so base original, with heavenly spoils, our spoils. What he decreed he effected, Man he made, and for him built magnificent this world, and earth his seat, him Lord pronounced, and O indignity, subjected to his service Angel wings, and flaming Ministers to watch and tend their earthly charge. Of these the vigilance I dread, and to elude, thus wrapt in mist of midnight vapour, glide obscure, and pry in every bush and brake, where hap may find the Serpent sleeping, in whose mazy folds to hide me, and the dark intent I bring. O foul descent, that I, who erst contended with Gods to sit the highest, am now constrain'd into a Beast, and mixt with bestial slime this essence to incarnate and imbrute, that to the height of Deity aspir'd. But what will not ambition and revenge descend to? Who aspires must down as low as high he soar'd, obnoxious first or last to basest things. Revenge at first, though sweet, bitter ere long, back on it self recoils. Let it, I reck not, so it light well aim'd, since higher I fall short, on him who next provokes my envy, this new favourite of Heaven, this man of clay, son of despite, whom us the more to spite his Maker raised from dust. Spite then with spite is best repaid. So saying, through each thicket dank or dry, like a black mist low creeping, he held on his midnight search, where soonest he might find the Serpent. Him fast sleeping soon he found, in labyrinth of many a round self roll'd, his head the midst, well stor'd with subtle wiles, not yet in horrid shade or dismal den, nor nocent yet, but on the grassy herb, fearless, unfear'd, he slept. In at his mouth the Devil enter'd, and his brutal sense in heart or head possessing, soon inspir'd with act intelligential, but his sleep disturbed not, waiting close the approach of morn. Now when as sacred light began to dawn in Eden on the humid flowers that breath'd the morning incense, when all things that breathe from the earth's great altar send up silent praise to the Creator, and his nostrils fill with grateful smell, forth came the human pair, and join'd their vocal worship to the choir of creatures wanting voice. That done, partake the season, prime for sweetest sense and airs, then commune how that day they best may ply their growing work. For much their work outgrew the hands dispatch of two Gardening so wide. And Eve first to her husband thus began. Adam, well may we labour still to dress this Garden, still to tend plant, herb, and flower, our pleasant task enjoin'd, but till more hands aid us, the work under our labour grows, luxurious by restraint, What we by day lop overgrown, or prune, or prop, or bind, one night or two with wanton growth derides, tending to wile. Thou therefore now advise, or hear what to my mind first thoughts present. Let us divide our labours, thou where choice leads thee, or where most needs, whether to wind the woodbine round this Arbour, or direct the clasping Ivy where to climb, while I in yonder spring of Roses, intermixt with Myrtle, find what to redress till noon. For while so near each other thus all day our task we choose, what wonder if so near looks intervene and smiles, or object new casual discourse draw on, which intermits our days work, brought to little, though begun early, and our supper comes unearn'd. To whom mild answer Adam thus return'd: Soul Eve, associate soul, to me beyond compare, above all living creatures dear, well hast thou motion'd, well thy thoughts employ'd, how we might best fulfill the work which here God hath assign'd us, nor of me shalt pass unpraised, for nothing lovelier can be found in woman, than to study household good, and good works in her husband to promote. Yet not so strictly hath our Lord imposed labour, as to debar us when we need refreshment, whether food or talk between, food of the mind, or this sweet intercourse of looks and smiles, for smiles from reason flow, to brute denied, and are of love the food, love not the lowest end of human life. For not to irksome toil, but to delight He made us, and delight to reason join'd. These paths and bowers, doubt not but our joint hands will keep from wilderness with ease, as wide as we need walk, till younger hands ere long assist us. But if much converse perhaps they satiate, to short absence I could yield, for solitude sometimes is best society, and short retirement urges sweet return. But other doubt possesses me, lest harm befall thee sever'd from me, for thou knowst what hath been warn'd us, what malicious foe, envying our happiness, and of his own despairing, seeks to work us woe and shame by sly assault, and somewhere nigh at hand watches no doubt with greedy hope to find his wish and best advantage us asunder, hopeless to circumvent us join'd, where each to other speedy aid might lend at need. Whether his first design be to withdraw our fealty from God, or to disturb conjugal love, than which perhaps no bliss enjoy'd by us excites his envy more, or this, or worse, leave not the faithful side that gave thee being, still shades thee and protects, the wife where danger or dishonour lurks, safest and seemliest by her husband stays, who guards her, or with her the worst endures. To whom the Virgin Majesty of Eve, as one who loves, and some unkindness meets, with sweet austere composure thus replied: Offspring of Heaven and Earth, and all Earths Lord, that such an enemy we have, who seeks our ruin, both by thee inform'd I learn, and from the parting Angel overheard, as in a shady nook I stood behind, just then return'd at shut of evening flowers. But that thou shouldst my firmness therefore doubt to God or thee, because we have a foe may tempt it, I expected not to hear. His violence thou fearst not, being such as we not capable of death or pain can either not receive or can repel. His fraud is then thy fear, which plain infers thy equal fear that my firm faith and love can by his fraud be shaken or seduced. Thoughts which how found they harbour in thy breast, Adam, misthought of her to thee so dear? To whom with healing words Adam replied: Daughter of God and Man, immortal Eve, for such thou art, from sin and blame entire, not diffident of thee do I dissuade thy absence from thy sight, but to avoid the tempt it self, intended by our foe. For he who tempts, though in vain, at least asperses the tempted with dishonour foul, supposed not incorruptible of faith, not proof against temptation. Thou thyself with scorn and anger wouldst resent the offer'd wrong, though ineffectual found. Misdeem not then, if such affront I labour to avert from thee alone, which on us both at once the Enemy, though bold, will hardly dare, or daring, first on me the salt shall light. Nor thou his malice and false guile contemn, Subtle he needs must be who could seduce Angels, nor think superfluous others aid. I from the influence of thy looks receive Access in every virtue, in thy sight More wise, more watchful, stronger, if need were Of outward strength, while shame thou looking on, Shame to be overcome or overreach'd, Would utmost vigour raise, and rais'd unite. Why shouldst not thou like sense within thee feel When I am present, and thy trial choose With me, best witness of thy virtue tried? So spake domestic Adam in his care And matrimonial love. But Eve, who thought less attributed to her faith sincere, thus her reply with accent sweet renew'd. If this be our condition, thus to dwell In narrow circuit straitn'd by a foe Subtle or violent, we not endued Single with like defence wherever met, How are we happy, still in fear of harm? But harm precedes not sin, only our foe Tempting affronts us with his foul esteem Of our integrity. His foul esteem Sticks no dishonour on our front, but turns foul on himself. Then wherefore shun'd or fear'd by us, who rather double honour gain From his surmise prov'd false, find peace within, Favour from Heaven, our witness from th' event? And what is faith, love, virtue, unassay'd Alone, without exterior help sustaind? Let us not then suspect our happy state Left so imperfet by the Maker wise, As not secure to single or combin'd. Frail is our happiness if this be so, And Eden were no Eden thus expos'd. To whom thus Adam fervently reply'd: O Woman, best are all things as the will Of God ordain'd them, his creating hand Nothing imperfet or deficient left Of all that he created, much less man, Or aught that might his happy state secure from outward force. Within himself the danger lies, yet lies Within his power; against his will He can receive no harm, but God left free The will, for what obeys reason is free, And reason he made right, but bid her well Beware, and still erect, lest by some fair Appearing good surpris'd she dictate false, And misinform the will to do what God Expressly hath forbid. Not then mistrust, but tender love enjoins That I should mind thee oft, and mind thou me. Firm we subsist, yet possible to swerve, Since reason not impossibly may meet Some specious object by the foe suborn'd, And fall into deception unaware, Not keeping strictest watch as she was warn'd. Seek not temptation then, which to avoid Were better, and most likely if from me Thou sever not, trial will come unsought. Wouldst thou approve thy constancy, approve First thy obedience; th'other who can know, Not seeing thee attempted, who attest? But if thou think trial unsought may find Us both securer then thus warn'd thou seemst, Go, for thy stay not free absents thee more. Go in thy native innocence, rely On what thou hast of virtue, summon all, For God towards thee hath done his part. Do thine. So spake the Patriarch of mankind, but Eve Persisted, yet submiss, though last, repli'd: With thy permission then, and thus forewarn'd, Chiefly by what thy own last reasoning words Touch'd only, that our trial when least sought May find us both perhaps far less prepar'd. The willinger I go, nor much expect A foe so proud will first the weaker seek, So bent the more shall shame him his repulse. Thus saying, from her husband's hand her hand soft she withdrew, and like a wood nymph light, Oread or Dryad, or of Delia's train, Betook her to the groves. But Delia's self in gate surpass'd, and Goddess like deport, though not as she with bow and quiver arm'd, but with such gardning tools as Art yet rude, guiltless of fire, had form'd, or Angels brought. To Pales or Pomona thus adorn'd Likest she seem'd, Pomona when she fled Vertumnus, or to Ceres in her prime, yet Virgin of Proserpina from Jove. Her long with ardent look his eye pursu'd, Delighted, but desiring more her stay. Oft he to her his charge of quick return Repeated, she to him as oft engag'd To be return'd by noon amid the Bower, And all things in best order to invite Noontide repast, or afternoons repose. O much deceiv'd, much failing, hapless Eve, Of thy presum'd return, event perverse! Thou never from that hour in Paradise Foundst either sweet repast, or sound repose. Such ambush hid among sweet flowers and shades Waited with hellish rancor imminent To intercept thy way, or send thee back Despoil'd of innocence, of faith, of bliss. For now, and since first break of dawn, the Fiend, Mere Serpent in appearance, forth was come, And on his quest, where likeliest he might find The only two of mankind, but in them The whole included race, his purpos'd prey. In bower and field he sought, where any tuft Of grove or garden plot more pleasant lay, Their tendance or plantation for delight By fountain or by shady rivulet. He sought them both, but wish'd his hap might find Eve separate. He wish'd, but not with hope of what so seldom chanc't, When to his wish, beyond his hope, Eve separate he spies, Veil'd in a cloud of fragrance, where she stood Half spied, so thick the roses bushing round About her glow'd, oft stooping to support Each flower of slender stalk, whose head, though gay Carnation, purple azure, or speck'd with gold, Hung drooping unsustaind. Them she upstays Gently with myrtle band, mindless the while Herself, though fairest unsupported flower, From her best prop so far, and storm so nigh. Nearer he drew, and many a walk travers'd Of stateliest cover, Cedar, Pine, or Palm. Then voluble and bold, now hid, now seen Among thick woven arborets and flowers Emborderd on each bank, the hand of Eve. Spot more delicious than those Gardens feign'd, Or of reviv'd Adonis, or renown'd Alcinous, host of old Laertes' son, Or that not mystic where the sapient King Held dalliance with his fair Egyptian spouse. Much he the place admir'd, the person more, As one who long in populous City pent, Where houses thick and sewers annoy the air, Forth issuing on a summers morn, to breathe Among the pleasant villages and farms Adjoyn'd, from each thing met conceives delight, The smell of grain, or tedded grass, or kine, Or dairy, each rural sight, each rural sound. If chance with Nymph like step fair Virgin pass, What pleasing seem'd, for her now pleases more, She most, and in her look sums all delight. Such pleasure took the Serpent to behold This flowery plat, the sweet recess Of Eve thus early, thus alone. Her heavenly form angelic, but more soft and feminine, Her graceful innocence, her every air Of gesture or least action overaw'd His malice, and with rapine sweet Bereav'd his fierceness of the fierce intent It brought. That space the evil one abstracted stood From his own evil, and for the time Remain'd stupidly good, of enmity Disarm'd, of guile, of hate, of envy, of revenge. But the hot Hell that always in him burns, Though in mid Heaven, soon ended his delight, And tortures him now more, the more he sees Of pleasure not for him ordain'd. Then soon fierce hate he recollects, and all his thoughts of mischief, gratulating, thus excites: Thoughts, whither have ye led me? With what sweet compulsion thus transported To forget what hither brought us? Hate not love, nor hope of Paradise for Hell, hope here to taste of pleasure, but all pleasure to destroy, save what is in destroying. Other joy to me is lost. Then let me not let pass occasion which now smiles. Behold alone the woman, opportune to all attempts, her husband, for I view far round, not nigh, whose higher intellectual more I shun, and strength of courage haughty, and of limb heroic built, though of terrestrial mold, foe not informidable, exempt from wound. I not, so much hath hell debased, and pain enfeebled me to what I was in Heaven. She fair, divinely fair, fit love for Gods, not terrible, though terror be in love and beauty, not approach'd by stronger hate, hate stronger under show of love well feign'd, the way which to her ruin now I tend. So spake the enemy of mankind, enclosed in Serpent, inmate bad, and toward Eve addressed his way, not with indented wave prone on the ground as since, but on his rear, circular base of rising folds, that tower'd fold above fold, a surging maze, his head crested aloft, and carbuncle his eyes, with burnish'd neck of verdant gold, erect amidst his circling spires, that on the grass floated redundant. Pleasing was his shape, and lovely, never since of Serpent kind lovelier, not those that in Illyria changed Hermione and Cadmus, or the God in Epidaurus, nor to which transform'd Ammonian Jove or Capitoline was seen, he with Olympius, this with her who bore Scipio, the height of Rome. With tract oblique at first, as one who sought excess, but fear'd to interrupt, sidelong he works his way, as when a ship by skilful steersman wrought Nigh rivers mouth or foreland, where the wind veers oft, as oft so steers and shifts her sail, so varied he, and of his tortuous train Curl'd many a wanton reef in sight of Eve, to lure her eye. She busied heard the sound of rustling leaves, but minded not, as used to such disport before her through the field, from every beast, more duteous at her call than at Circean call the herd disguised. He bolder now, uncall'd, before her stood, but as in gaze admiring. Oft he bow'd his turret crest and sleek enamell'd neck, fawning, and lick'd the ground whereon she trod. His gentle dumb expression turn'd at length the eye of Eve to mark his play. He, glad of her attention gain'd, with serpent tongue organic, or impulse of vocal air, his fraudulent temptation thus began: Wonder not, sovereign Mistress, if perhaps thou canst, who art sole wonder, much less arm thy looks, the heaven of mildness, with disdain, displeased that I approach thee thus, and gaze insatiate, I thus single, nor have fear'd thy awful brow, more awful thus retir'd. Fairest resemblance of thy Maker fair, thee all things living gaze on, all things thine by gift, and thy celestial beauty adore with ravishment beheld, their best beheld where universally admir'd. But here in this enclosure wild, these beasts among, beholders rude, and shallow to discern half what in thee is fair, one man except, who sees thee, and what is one, who shouldst be seen a Goddess among Gods, ador'd and serv'd by Angels numberless, thy daily train. So gloz'd the Tempter, and his Proem tun'd. Into the heart of Eve his words made way, though at the voice much marvelling. At length, not unamazed, she thus in answer spake: What may this mean? Language of man pronounc'd by tongue of brute, and human sense express'd? The first at least of these I thought denied to Beasts, whom God on their creation day created mute to all articulate sound. The latter I demur, for in their looks much reason, and in their actions oft appears. Thee, Serpent, subtlest Beast of all the field I knew, but not with human voice endued. Redouble then this miracle, and say How cam'st thou speakable of mute, and how to me so friendly grown above the rest of brutal kind, that daily are in sight? Say, for such wonder claims attention due. To whom the guileful Tempter thus replied: Empress of this fair world, resplendent Eve, Easie to me it is to tell thee all What thou commandst, and right thou shouldst be obey'd. I was at first as other Beasts that graze the trodden Herb, of abject thoughts and low, as was my food, nor aught but food discern'd or sex, and apprehended nothing high, till on a day roving the field I chanc'd a goodly Tree far distant to behold, Loaden with fruit of fairest colours mixt, ruddy and gold. I nearer drew to gaze, when from the boughs a savoury odour blown, Grateful to appetite, more pleas'd my sense Then smell of sweetest fennel, or the teats Of ewe or goat dropping with milk at even, Unsuck'd of lamb or kid, that tend their play. To satisfy the sharp desire I had of tasting those fair apples, I resolv'd not to defer. Hunger and thirst at once, powerful perswaders, Quicken'd at the scent of that alluring fruit, Urg'd me so keen. About the mossy trunk I wound me soon, for high from ground the branches would require Thy utmost reach, or Adams. Round the tree all other Beasts that saw, with like desire Longing and envying stood, but could not reach. Amid the tree now got, where plenty hung, Tempting so nigh, to pluck and eat my fill I spared not, for such pleasure till that hour At feed or fountain never had I found. Sated at length, ere long I might perceive Strange alteration in me, to degree Of reason in my inward powers, and speech Wanted not long, though to this shape retaind. Thenceforth to speculations high or deep I turn'd my thoughts, and with capacious mind Consider'd all things visible in Heaven, or Earth, or middle, all things fair and good. But all that fair and good in thy divine semblance, And in thy beauties heavenly ray United I beheld, no fair to thine Equivalent or second, which compell'd me thus, Though importune perhaps, to come and gaze, And worship thee of right declar'd, Sovereign of Creatures, universal Dame. So talk'd the spirited sly Snake, and Eve, yet more amaz'd, unwary thus replied: Serpent, thy overpraising leaves in doubt The vertue of that fruit, in thee first prov'd. But say, where grows the tree? From hence how far? For many are the trees of God that grow In Paradise, and various, yet unknown to us, In such abundance lies our choice, as leaves A greater store of fruit untouch'd, Still hanging incorruptible, till men Grow up to their provision, and more hands Help to disburden Nature of her birth. To whom the wily Adder blithe and glad: Empress, the way is ready, and not long. Beyond a row of Myrtles, on a flat, Fast by a fountain, one small thicket past Of blowing myrrh and balm, if thou accept My conduct, I can bring thee thither soon. Lead then, said Eve. He leading swiftly roll'd in tangles, and made intricate seem straight, to mischief swift. Hope elevates, and joy brightens his crest, As when a wandring fire, compact Of unctuous vapour, which the night Condenses, and the cold environs round, kindled through agitation to a flame, which oft they say some evil spirit attends, hovering and blazing with delusive light, misleads the mazed night wanderer from his way to bogs and mires, and oft through pond or pool, there swallowed up and lost from succor far. So glister'd the dire snake, and into fraud led Eve, our credulous mother, to the tree of prohibition, root of all our woe. Which when she saw, thus to her guide she spake: Serpent, we might have spared our coming hither, fruitless to me, though fruit be here to excess, the credit of whose virtue rest with thee, wondrous indeed, if cause of such effects. But of this tree we may not taste nor touch, God so commanded, and left that command sole daughter of his voice. The rest we live law to ourselves, our reason is our law. To whom the tempter guilefully replied: Indeed? Hath God then said that of the fruit of all these garden trees ye shall not eat? Yet Lords declared of all in earth or air? To whom thus Eve, yet sinless: Of the fruit of each tree in the garden we may eat, but of the fruit of this fair tree amidst the garden God hath said, Ye shall not eat thereof, nor shall ye touch it, lest ye die. She scarce had said, though brief, when now more bold the tempter, but with show of zeal and love to man, and indignation at his wrong, new part puts on, and as to passion moved, fluctuates disturbed, yet comely, and in act raised, as of some great matter to begin, as when of old some Orator renown'd in Athens or free Rome, where eloquence flourish'd, since mute, to some great cause address'd, stood in himself collected, while each part, motion, each act, one audience ere the tongue, sometimes in height began, as no delay of preface brooking, through his zeal of right. So standing, moving, and to height upgrown, the tempter all impassioned thus began: O sacred, wise, and wisdom giving plant, Mother of Science, now I feel thy power Within me clear, not only to discern Things in their causes, but to trace the ways Of highest agents, deem'd however wise. Queen of this Universe, do not believe Those rigid threats of death. Ye shall not die. How should ye? By the fruit? It gives you life to knowledge. By the threatner? Look at me, me who have touch'd and tasted, yet both live, and life more perfet have attain'd Than fate meant me, by venturing higher than my lot. Shall that be shut to man which to the Beast Is open? Or will God incense his ire For such a petty trespass, and not praise Rather your dauntless virtue, whom the pain Of death denounc'd, whatever thing death be, Deterr'd not from achieving what might lead To happier life, knowledge of good and evil? Of good, how just? Of evil, if what is evil be real, why not known, since easier shunn'd? God therefore cannot hurt ye and be just, Not just, not God, not fear'd then nor obey'd. Your fear it self of death removes the fear. Why then was this forbid? Why but to awe? Why but to keep ye low and ignorant, His worshippers? He knows that in the day ye eat thereof, Your eyes, that seem so clear, yet are but dim, Shall perfectly be then open'd and clear'd, And ye shall be as Gods, knowing both good and evil as they know. That ye should be as Gods, since I as man, Internal man, is but proportion meet, I of brute human, ye of human Gods. So ye shall die perhaps, by putting off Human to put on Gods, death to be wish'd, Though threatn'd, which no worse than this can bring. And what are Gods that man may not become As they, participating Godlike food? The Gods are first, and that advantage use On our belief, that all from them proceeds? I question it. For this fair Earth I see Warm'd by the Sun, producing every kind, them nothing. If they all things, who enclos'd knowledge of good and evil in this Tree, that whoso eats thereof forthwith attains wisdom without their leave? And wherein lies the offence, that man should thus attain to know? What can your knowledge hurt him, or this Tree impart against his will, if all be his? Or is it envy? And can envy dwell in heavenly breasts? These and many more causes import your need of this fair fruit. Goddess humane, reach them, and freely taste. He ended, and his words, replete with guile, into her heart too easy entrance won. Fixed on the fruit she gazed, which to behold might tempt alone, and in her ears the sound yet rung of his persuasive words, impregn'd with reason to her seeming, and with truth. Meanwhile the hour of noon drew on, and waked an eager appetite, raised by the smell so savoury of that fruit, which with desire inclinable, now grown to touch or taste, solicited her longing eye. Yet first, pausing a while, thus to herself she mused: Great are thy virtues, doubtless best of fruits, though kept from man, and worthy to be admir'd, whose taste, too long forborne, at first assay gave elocution to the mute, and taught the tongue, not made for speech, to speak thy praise. Thy praise he also, who forbids thy use, conceals not from us, naming thee the Tree of knowledge, knowledge both of good and evil. Forbids us then to taste, but his forbidding commends thee more, while it infers the good by thee communicated, and our want. For good unknown sure is not had, or had and yet unknown is as not had at all. In plain then, what forbids he but to know? Forbids us good, forbids us to be wise. Such prohibitions bind not. But if death binds us with after bands, what profits then our inward freedom? In the day we eat of this fair fruit, our doom is we shall die. How dies the serpent? He hath eaten and lives, and knows, and speaks, and reasons, and discerns, irrational till then. For us alone was death invented? Or to us denied this intellectual food, for beasts reserved? For beasts it seems. Yet that one beast which first hath tasted envies not, but brings with joy the good befallen him, author unsuspect, friendly to man, far from deceit or guile. What fear I then? Rather, what know to fear under this ignorance of good and evil, of God or death, of law or penalty? Here grows the cure of all, this fruit divine, fair to the eye, inviting to the taste, of virtue to make wise. What hinders then to reach and feed at once both body and mind? So saying, her rash hand in evil hour forth reaching to the fruit, she plucked, she ate. Earth felt the wound, and Nature from her seat, sighing through all her works, gave signs of woe, that all was lost. Back to the thicket slunk the guilty serpent, and well might, for Eve, intent now wholly on her taste, naught else regarded, such delight till then as seem'd in fruit she never tasted, whether true or fancied so, through expectation high of knowledge. Nor was Godhead from her thought. Greedily she engorged without restraint, and knew not eating death. Satiate at length, and heightened thus with wine, jocund and boon, thus to herself she pleasingly began: sovereign, virtuous, precious of all trees in Paradise, of operation blest to sapience, hitherto obscur'd, infam'd, and thy fair fruit let hang, as to no end created. But henceforth my early care, not without song, each morning, and due praise, shall tend thee, and the fertile burden ease of thy full branches, offer'd free to all, till dieted by thee, I grow mature in knowledge, as the Gods, who all things know, though others envy what they cannot give. For had the gift been theirs, it had not here thus grown. Experience next to thee I owe, best guide. Not following thee, I had remain'd in ignorance. Thou open'st wisdoms way, and giv'st excess, though secret she retire. And I perhaps am secret. Heaven is high, high and remote, to see from thence distinct each thing on earth, and other care perhaps may have diverted from continual watch our great forbidder, safe with all his spies about him. But to Adam in what sort shall I appear? Shall I to him make known as yet my change, and give him to partake full happiness with me, or rather not, but keep the odds of knowledge in my power, without co-partner, so to add what wants in female sex, the more to draw his love, and render me more equal, and perhaps, a thing not undesirable, sometime superior? For inferior who is free? This may be well. But what if God have seen, and death ensue? Then I shall be no more, and Adam wedded to another Eve, shall live with her enjoying, I extinct, a death to think. Confirm'd then I resolve, Adam shall share with me in bliss or woe. So dear I love him, that with him all deaths I could endure, without him live no life. So saying, from the tree her step she turn'd, but first low reverence done, as to the power that dwelt within, whose presence had infused into the plant's sciential sap, derived from nectar drink of Gods. Adam the while, waiting desirous her return, had wove of choicest flowers a garland to adorn her tresses, and her rural labours crown, as reapers oft are wont their harvest queen. Great joy he promised to his thoughts, and new solace in her return, so long delay'd. Yet oft his heart, divine of something ill, misgave him. He the faltering measure felt, and forth to meet her went, the way she took that morn when first they parted. By the tree of knowledge he must pass, there he her met, scarce from the tree returning, in her hand a bough of fairest fruit, that downy smil'd, new gather'd, and ambrosial smell diffused. To him she hasted, in her face excuse came prologue, and apology to prompt, which with bland words at will she thus addressed: Hast thou not wonderd, Adam, at my stay? Thee I have miss'd, and thought it long depriv'd Thy presence, agony of love till now Not felt, nor shall be twice, for never more Mean I to try what rash untry'd I sought, The pain of absence from thy sight. But strange hath been the cause, and wonderful to hear. This tree is not, as we are told, a tree of danger tasted, nor to evil unknown opening the way, but of divine effect to open eyes, and make them Gods who taste, and hath been tasted such. The Serpent, wise, or not restrain'd as we, or not obeying, hath eaten of the fruit, and is become not dead as we are threatned, but thenceforth endued with human voice and human sense, reasoning to admiration, and with me persuasively hath so prevail'd, that I have also tasted, and have also found the effects to correspond. Op'ner mine eyes, dim erst, dilated spirits, ampler heart, and growing up to Godhead, which for thee chiefly I sought, without thee could despise, for bliss as thou hast part, to me is bliss, tedious, unshared with thee, and odious soon. Thou therefore also taste, that equal lot may join us, equal joy, as equal love, lest thou not tasting, different degree disjoin us, and I then too late renounce Deity for thee, when Fate will not permit. Thus Eve with countenance blithe her story told, but in her cheek distemper flushing glow'd. On th' other side Adam, soon as he heard the fatal trespass done by Eve, amazed, astonished stood and blank, while horror chill ran through his veins, and all his joints relaxed. From his slack hand the garland wreath'd for Eve down dropt, and all the faded roses shed. Speechless he stood and pale, till thus at length, first to himself, the inward silence broke. O fairest of creation, last and best of all Gods works, creature in whom excell'd whatever can to sight or thought be form'd, holy, divine, good, amiable, or sweet, how art thou lost, how on a sudden lost, defaced, deflower'd, and now to death devote? Rather, how hast thou yielded to transgress the strict forbiddance, how to violate the sacred fruit forbidden? Some cursed fraud of enemy hath beguil'd thee, yet unknown, and me with thee hath ruin'd, for with thee certain my resolution is to die. How can I live without thee? How forgo thy sweet converse, and love so dearly join'd, to live again in these wild woods forlorn? Should God create another Eve, and I another rib afford, yet loss of thee would never from my heart. No, no, I feel the link of nature draw me, flesh of flesh, bone of my bone thou art, and from thy state mine never shall be parted, bliss or woe. So having said, as one from sad dismay recomforted, and after thoughts disturbed, submitting to what seem'd remedialess, thus in calm mood his words to Eve he turn'd. Bold deed thou hast presum'd, adventurous Eve, and peril great provoked, who thus hast dar'd, had it been only coveting, to eye that sacred fruit, sacred to abstinence, much more to taste it, under ban to touch. But past who can recall, or done undo? Not God omnipotent, nor Fate. Yet so perhaps thou shalt not die. Perhaps the fact is not so heinous now, foretasted fruit, profaned first by the Serpent, by him first made common and unhallowed, ere our taste, nor yet on him found deadly. He yet lives, lives as thou saidst, and gains to live as man higher degree of life, inducement strong to us as likely tasting to attain proportional ascent, which cannot be but to be Gods, or Angels, Demigods. Nor can I think that God, Creator wise, though threatning, will in earnest so destroy us his prime creatures, dignified so high, set over all his works, which in our fall, for us created, needs with us must fail, dependent made. So God shall uncreate, be frustrate, do, undo, and labour lose, not well conceived of God, who, though his power creation could repeat, yet would be loath us to abolish, lest the adversary triumph, and say, Fickle their state whom God most favours, who can please him long? Me first he ruin'd, now mankind, whom will he next? Matter of scorn, not to be given the foe. However, I with thee have fixt my lot, certain to undergo like doom. If death consort with thee, death is to me as life. So forcible within my heart I feel the bond of Nature draw me to my own in thee. For what thou art is mine, our state cannot be sever'd. We are one flesh, to lose thee were to lose my self. So Adam, and thus Eve to him repli'd. O glorious trial of exceeding love, illustrious evidence, example high, engaging me to emulate, but short of thy perfection how shall I attain, Adam, from whose dear side I boast me sprung, and gladly of our union hear thee speak, one heart, one soul in both, whereof good proof this day affords, declaring thee resolv'd rather than death, or aught than death more dread shall separate us, link'd in love so dear, to undergo with me one guilt, one crime, if any be, of tasting this fair fruit, whose virtue, for of good still good proceeds, direct or by occasion hath presented this happy trial of thy love, which else so eminently never had been known. Were it, I thought, death menaced would ensue this my attempt, I would sustain alone the worst, and not persuade thee, rather die deserted, than oblige thee with a fact pernicious to thy peace, chiefly assur'd remarkably so late of thy so true, so faithful love unequal'd. But I feel far otherwise th' event, not death, but life augmented, op'nd eyes, new hopes, new joys, taste so divine, that what of sweet before hath touch'd my sense, flat seems to this and harsh. On my experience, Adam, freely taste, and fear of death deliver to the winds. So saying she embrac'd him, and for joy tenderly wept, much won that he his love had so ennobled, as of choice to incur divine displeasure for her sake, or death. In recompense, for such compliance bad, such recompense best merits, from the bough she gave him of that fair enticing fruit with liberal hand. He scrupled not to eat, against his better knowledge, not deceived, but fondly overcome with female charm. Earth trembled from her entrails, as again in pangs, and Nature gave a second groan, Sky lour'd, and muttering thunder some sad drops wept at completing of the mortal sin original, while Adam took no thought, eating his fill, nor Eve to iterate her former trespass fear'd, the more to soothe him with her lov'd society, that now as with new wine intoxicated, both they swim in mirth, and fancy that they feel Divinity within them breeding wings, wherewith to scorn the earth. But that false fruit far other operation first display'd, carnal desire inflaming. He on Eve began to cast lascivious eyes, she him as wantonly repaid, in lust they burn, till Adam thus gan Eve to dalliance move. Eve, now I see thou art exact of taste, and elegant, of sapience no small part, since to each meaning savour we apply, and palate call judicious. I the praise yield thee, so well this day thou hast purvey'd. Much pleasure we have lost while we abstain'd from this delightful fruit, nor known till now true relish tasting. If such pleasure be in things to us forbidden, it might be wish'd for this one tree had been forbidden 10. But come, so well refresh'd, now let us play, as meet is, after such delicious fare. For never did thy beauty since the day I saw thee first, and wedded thee, adorn'd with all perfections, so inflame my sense with ardor to enjoy thee. Fairer now than ever, bounty of this virtuous tree. So said he, and forbore not glance or toy Of amorous intent, well understood Of Eve, whose eye darted contagious fire. Her hand he seiz'd, and to a shady bank, Thick overhead with verdant roof embowerd, He led her, nothing loath. Flowers were the couch, Pansies and violets and asphodel And hyacinth, earth's freshest, softest lap. There they their fill of love and love's disport Took largely, of their mutual guilt the seal, The solace of their sin, till dewy sleep Oppress'd them, wearied with their amorous play. Soon as the force of that fallacious fruit, That with exhilarating vapour bland About their spirits had play'd, and inmost powers Made err, was now exhal'd, and grosser sleep, Bred of unkindly fumes, with conscious dreams Encumber'd, now had left them, up they rose As from unrest, and each the other viewing, Soon found their eyes how open'd, and their minds how darken'd. Innocence, that as a veil had shadow'd them From knowing ill, was gone. Just confidence and native righteousness And honour from about them naked left To guilty shame. He cover'd, but his robe uncover'd more. So rose the Danite strong, Herculean Samson, from the harlot lap Of Philistean Dalila, and waked, shorn of his strength. They destitute and bare Of all their virtue, silent and in face Confounded, long they sate, as struck and mute, Till Adam, though not less than Eve abash'd, At length gave utterance to these words constrain'd: O Eve, in evil hour thou didst give ear To that false worm, of whomsoever taught To counterfeit mans voice, true in our fall, False in our promis'd rising. Since our eyes Op'nd we find indeed, and find we know Both good and evil, good lost, and evil got. Bad fruit of knowledge, if this be to know, Which leaves us naked thus, of honour void, Of innocence, of faith, of purity, Our wonted ornaments now soil'd and stain'd, And in our faces evident the signs Of foul concupiscence, whence evil store, Even shame the last of evils, of the first be sure then. How shall I behold the face henceforth Of God or Angel, erst with joy and rapture So oft beheld? Those heavenly shapes will dazzle now This earthly, with their blaze insufferably bright. O might I here in solitude live Savage, in some glade obscure, Where highest woods impenetrable To star or sunlight spread their umbrage broad, And brown as evening. Cover me, ye Pines, ye Cedars, with innumerable boughs Hide me, where I may never see them more. But let us now as in bad plight devise What best may for the present serve to hide The parts of each from other, that seem Most to shame obnoxious, and unseemliest seen. Some Tree, whose broad smooth leaves together sew'd And girded on our loins, may cover round Those middle parts, that this new comer shame There sit not, and reproach us as unclean. So counsell'd he, and both together went Into the thickest wood. There soon they chose The Fig tree, not that kind for fruit renown'd, But such as at this day to Indians known In Malabar or Deccan spreads her arms, Branching so broad and long, that in the ground The bended twigs take root, and daughters grow About the Mother tree, a pillar'd shade, High overarch'd, and echoing walks between. There oft the Indian herdsman, shunning heat, Shelters in cool, and tends his pasturing herds At loopholes cut through thickest shade. Those leaves they gather'd, broad as Amazonian targe, And with what skill they had, together sew'd, To gird their waist, vain covering, if to hide Their guilt and dreaded shame. O how unlike to that first naked glory! Such of late Columbus found th'American, so girt with feather'd cincture, naked else and wild among the trees on isles and woody shores. Thus fenc't, and as they thought, the shame in part cover'd, but not at rest or ease of mind, they sate them down to weep. Nor only tears reign'd at their eyes, but high winds worse within began to rise, high passions, anger, hate, mistrust, suspicion, discord, and shook sore their inward state of mind, calm region once, and full of peace, now toss'd and turbulent, for understanding rul'd not, and the will heard not her lore, both in subjection now to sensual appetite, who from beneath, usurping over Sovereign Reason, claim'd superior sway. From thus distemper'd breast, Adam, estrang'd in look and alter'd style, speech intermitted, thus to Eve renew'd: Would thou hadst hearken'd to my words, and stay'd with me as I besought thee, when that strange desire of wandring this unhappy morn I know not whence possess'd thee. We had then remain'd still happy, not as now, despoil'd of all our good, sham'd, naked, miserable. Let none henceforth seek needless cause to approve the faith they owe. When earnestly they seek such proof, conclude they then begin to fail. To whom, soon mov'd with touch of blame, thus Eve: What words have pass'd thy lips, Adam severe? Imput'st thou that to my default, or will Of wandring, as thou call'st it, which who knows But might as ill have happen'd thou being by, Or to thy self perhaps? Hadst thou been there, Or here th' attempt, thou couldst not have discern'd Fraud in the Serpent, speaking as he spake, No ground of enmity between us known, Why he should mean me ill, or seek to harm. Was I to have never parted from thy side, as good have grown there still a liveless rib? Being as I am, why didst not thou, the Head, Command me absolutely not to go, Going into such danger as thou saidst? Too facile then thou didst not much gainsay, Nay, didst permit, approve, and fair dismiss. Hadst thou been firm and fixt in thy dissent, Neither had I transgress'd, nor thou with me. To whom then first incens't Adam replied: Is this the love, is this the recompense Of mine to thee, ingrateful Eve, express'd Immutable, when thou wert lost, not I, Who might have liv'd, and joy'd immortal bliss, Yet willingly chose rather death with thee? And am I now upbraided as the cause Of thy transgressing? Not enough severe It seems in thy restraint. What could I more? I warn'd thee, I admonish'd thee, foretold The danger, and the lurking enemy That lay in wait. Beyond this had been force, and force upon free will Hath here no place. But confidence then bore thee on, secure Either to meet no danger, or to find Matter of glorious trial. And perhaps I also err'd in overmuch admiring what seem'd in thee so perfect, that I thought no evil durst attempt thee. But I rue that error now, which is become my crime, and thou th' accuser. Thus it shall befall him who, to worth in women over trusting, lets her will rule. Restraint she will not brook, and left to herself, If evil thence ensue, she first his weak indulgence will accuse. Thus they in mutual accusation spent the fruitless hours, but neither self condemning, and of their vain contest appear'd no end. Notes: Line 186, not, nor 1674. Line 213, here, bare 1674. Line 394, likest, likeliest 1674. Line 922, hast, hath 1674. The end of the 9th book. Recording by Thomas Copeland.